Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and we got another EHeroes edition. Today we're going to Plymouth, Massachusetts, and speaking with Social Security Disability Attorney Patrick Hartwig. Patrick, thanks for being on the show. And this is not a typical entrepreneur interview. And the reason I brought you on here is because you're more of an advocate. You're more of the person who, when entrepreneurs like myself, or even individuals out there working a job hurt themselves, they need someone like you to help them.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I'm really excited to participate.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions, though, in the whole Social Security disability insurance realm. People don't know that they can apply for it if they get hurt.
It's true. Every week that any one of us out there gets a paycheck, we are paying Social Security taxes. And part of that Social Security trust fund goes into a separate category for folks who become disabled. It's called Social Security Disability Insurance. And that's exactly what it is. It's insurance in case you become disabled and are unable to work at any point before you reach retirement age. And so that is something that a lot of people don't even realize, that it's a protection that they actually have. And so I encounter that every day. And part of what I do is telling folks what they might be eligible for.
So how do people get started? I mean, because they might see a website, or they might hear something on YouTube, or maybe they saw some of your videos, because you got a lot of them and they're great.
Thank you.
But what's the first step?
The first step, I believe, is either a phone call to someone like me, someone who does Social Security disability law every day, all day, or to go directly to Social Security itself. Now, going to Social Security itself can always sound intimidating. Oftentimes, there's a long line or a long time to wait on the telephone, and you may not get the best customer service. I think we've all experienced something like that. And so the best thing I think to do is, instead of trying to do a lot of research on your own, is to, you know, look for people like me online, or give someone like me a call. And what we all do, and I do a big chunk of my everyday, is talking to folks who simply have questions about this whole process and whether or not they're eligible. And I spend a good portion of every morning talking to potential clients, and just letting them know what they're in store for, what they might be eligible for, and oftentimes why they're not eligible. It's just the reality of the system.
Now, what's the time frame? So, if I would get hurt and I needed to apply, what is the time frame from start to finish that I would, end up getting, some type of monetary, fund, or how does that work?
Well, the first thing to realize right off the bat is that the Social Security Administration is a federal program. It's an enormous system. And there are millions of people around the country each year applying for Social Security disability benefits. And so nothing that happens through this process is what you would call quick. And so, typically speaking, a Social Security case can go up through 3 different administrative stages. And that first stage is what they call the initial stage of review. And that's where it usually takes 4 to 6 months for Social Security to gather your information, gather your medical records, and determine whether or not you fit into their rules. And statistically speaking, only about 25% of all applications across the country are approved at that first stage.
Wow.
And therefore, most people have to appeal. And that second stage is called reconsideration. And it's essentially another look at similar pieces of information by a new set of eyes. That takes another 4 to 6 months. Statistically, only about 15% of people at reconsideration get approved. And if you get denied at that stage, then you file a request for a hearing, where you ask for a scheduled date in front of a Social Security judge. And oftentimes people wait up to a year just for that hearing. And so the process can be anywhere from 4 months to 2 years in reality. It's a long process, and there's lots of different places where you can slip up or abandon the claim out of despair. And that's part of what I do is I help people continue to fight.
It just sounds like a lot of hoop jumping. And so how do you make it easier for, the injured or those applying to, get this process to move faster?
The first thing I do is I tell every new client or any potential client is no matter what your question is, or no matter what you get in the mail from Social Security or a phone call from Social Security, the first thing you do is give us a call right away. Ask us the question. We're going to know the answer. We're going to be able to ease your mind and let you know exactly what, if anything, you have to do. Oftentimes, there's nothing for you to do at that moment. The language in the letters that Social Security often sends can be very convoluted. It's not necessarily direct. And so we see these letters every day. This is all that I do. And so we can tell you exactly what each letter means, what, if anything, you need to do. And we can make sure that anything that has to get done gets done immediately, so that even though this is a long process and there's very few things we can actually do to shorten the process, we can do everything as efficiently as possible with as little effort and as little worry from our clients. And that's what we aim to do every day. And that alone can help folks get through what is already a very challenging time, because they're not working, they can't pay their bills, they're injured or disabled in some way. So they're in pain, they're in some type of discomfort. Life is already extraordinarily difficult. Last thing they need to do is worry about a lot of red tape. And that's what I do. We try to take the pressure off as much as we can throughout this whole process.
It's amazing because, I look at some of your videos and, you have great testimonials from people that, carpenters
Yep.
and bus drivers,
Yep.
and, the whole gamut. But how does an entrepreneur like me, who's, spent most of his life not working for companies, and if I hurt myself, what do I do? I mean, do I have the same protections as someone who's worked for someone else?
Well, Rob, as long as you're paying Social Security taxes, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And so an entrepreneur, a self-employed person, as long as they're filing taxes each year and paying FICA taxes for themselves, then that person will be insured for disability insurance. You basically need to pay taxes enough in 5 out of the most recent 10 years to remain eligible for this insurance policy. That's part of Social Security.
Now, I guess that differentiates those that have never worked, but have chronic illnesses such as diabetes, or they're on dialysis, and so they can apply, but that's a different fund.
It is. And so that is what Social Security calls supplemental security income. It has nothing to do with whether or not you've paid enough in Social Security taxes. It's not an insurance policy. It's simply a form of federal welfare for folks who are disabled, cannot work, and are very limited in their income or assets. And so it's a program based on disability and income and asset limits. If you're disabled and you've never been able to work because of that disability, Social Security, when they created the system, created this separate fund for folks in that exact category. It's another layer of protection for us as an entire society, for folks who, for a lot of different reasons I see every day, have never been able to work full time.
How did you get involved with all this? Because, I mean, granted, there are other lawyers, some specialize in personal injury, some specialize in trademark law, but why Social Security?
Well, when I was in law school, I had, just by happenstance, I got an internship with a nonprofit legal services outfit in Boston. And it was in their health and disability unit. And it opened my eyes because, it sounds cheesy, but the reason I went to law school in the first place was I really wanted to help people. and help people who, were oftentimes overwhelmed or marginalized in some way, to try to get what they deserve in situations where oftentimes it just moves right past them because they can't quite handle everything that's coming at them at once. And I was immediately drawn to this exact niche. And when I got out of law school, although there were no jobs available in that exact small niche, I started working in real estate, and it was truly dreadful. Everybody was very contentious. The clients were very difficult to help. Nobody seemed to appreciate it, and I didn't feel like I was helping anyone. And I mean that in the most important sense, helping improve someone's life. And as I searched and searched that first year or so after law school for an opening in the disability world, and when I found it, I jumped on it and I went all in on it. And I've been doing exclusively Social Security disability law now for over 10 years.
Wow.
And I love it. It's what I love to do. I really feel strongly about the people that I help, and I feel good when I go to bed at night. And that's very, very important to me. And it's something that I like to be able to share and show my own children,
Hmm.
that is something very important in life, and that they see that as they grow up.
Now, do you just service people in Massachusetts, or do you service other areas?
No, Social Security, again, because it's a federal program and these are administrative law hearings, I can go and do Social Security cases in any state in the country. And because I only practice this small area of law that's very specialized, I accept clients just about anywhere. Now, I primarily go through the New England states, but I've accepted clients all over the country. And it's because I know the system, no matter which state you're in, it's the same system. And because this is all I do, oftentimes I feel the person would be better off having me as their attorney than someone local who doesn't necessarily specialize in this kind of work on a day-to-day basis.
So if I get hurt and I can't work, what do you require? I mean, do you check my medical records? Do you talk to my doctors? I mean, how does that work?
It may sound simple, but I usually simply have a 30-minute conversation or so with you. And I have a whole list of questions that I would ask you, where I try to gather information about your basic demographics, your age, your location, some information about your work history over the last 15 years. Part of what I'm looking for is, number one, to see if you've worked enough and paid enough into Social Security to be eligible for their SSDI program. But also, I'd like to know what kind of work you have done, because part of Social Security's definition of disability is determining whether or not you can go back to your old job.
Hmm.
And some jobs are easier than others from a physical standpoint or even from a mental standpoint. And so that's important in every case. And then I ask you typical questions about your medical issues and the timeline, and some very basics about what your conditions are. What kind of treatment have you had? What kind of medications do you take? Where do things stand right now? And what are your doctors telling you about your future? And then I'll ask you a few different questions about your assets and your financial situation to see if you might be eligible for Social Security's SSI program, the supplemental security income. And then I kind of weigh it all out, and I'll be able to tell you whether or not I think you're eligible, and if so, what I recommend you do next. And I can point you in the right direction no matter what.
Now you touched on kind of a key word there, where you said that they can't do their existing job. They're injured, they can't do their existing job. But sometimes I've heard people say, well, Social Security says I can still work, I just can't do that job. But their physical pain that they have says that they can't do much of anything, but they still want
And
proof that they can or cannot work.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head right there, Rob, and it illustrates just how challenging this system really is. You know, folks believe, some people have a misconception that it's easy to get approved for Social Security disability benefits. It's simply not true. If you look at the actual numbers instead of anecdotal examples, it's very challenging. The roles, the sequential evaluation process is very challenging. And secondly, Social Security has tightened the belt over the last 10 years. And so from a typical case standpoint, some cases that were awarded 10 years ago, the decision makers simply are not awarding now. That's the reality. And what people always have some confusion with is, I can't do my job as a carpenter anymore. That's all I've ever done in my life. From the time I was 18 years old, I've been a carpenter. I can't do that. It's obvious that I can't do that. How am I getting denied? Well, Social Security's definition of disability in most situations centers around your ability to do some type of full-time work anywhere in the United States, not just in your local area, but anywhere. And that can be a very challenging hurdle in many cases.
Yeah, it's sounds like it's tougher than people put it out to be. I mean, they're like, oh, I'm injured, I'm just going to go file, and they don't
Oh,
understand the waiting period. They don't understand the rules. They try to do it themselves. They fail, and then they look at the paperwork and they're like, there's no way.
yeah. And I'll tell you another thing that makes it very challenging, and it surprises a lot of folks when I first tell them, is that in order to be found disabled, you need to have a medical impairment that is so severe that it will keep you from working on a full-time basis for at least 12 months in a row. Not 6 months, not 9 months. Many folks who have an injury or an illness can recover, thankfully, in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And they're not able to work during that time, and life is very challenging. Everything's coming at them very fast. The bills are coming in, but the income isn't. And people are often upset when I have to tell them, if you were only out of work for 6 months or 9 months, unfortunately, you don't have a Social Security disability case.
Right.
We need to show either you have already been out of work 12 months, or, and this is fair, you're expected to be out of work for 12 months.
And with SSI, if your spouse makes too much money, you could be denied your claim.
It's a shockingly low amount of money as well. If your spouse makes, roughly speaking, over $1,000 a month, chances are you're not eligible for SSI benefits. That's only $12,000 a year.
Yeah. And
you couldn't live off of that anyway. And that is another part of the puzzle that makes this so challenging.
And I sometimes I think there's a disparity too, because women, not women in general, but women who are defending their kids because they're single moms. The child has some type of illness, like ADD or some mental thing. They can get qualified really quickly, but a person with a physical ailment, they're waiting months and months and years, and they're like, wait a minute, this is not fair. What's going on?
Yeah.
And and then this is why we have people. I got a fly going around here. This is why we have great advocates like you, who are trying to help people jump through all these hoops.
No, I appreciate that. And I think it does count when folks see that you're passionate about what you do. Not only do you know what you're talking about, but you're in it for the right reasons. And there's a lot of disappointment along the way in these Social Security cases. And folks are getting disappointing news in other spheres of their life anyway. They're getting foreclosed on. They're getting evicted. They got bad news from the doctor. Their electricity got shut off. Everything in their life is being turned upside down. And oftentimes, my clients get denied at the first stage of review and the second stage of review. And to have to talk to them each time they're denied after they've just been through the ringer is very challenging. But I think what people realize over time is that if they feel like you're committed, you're competent, and you're compassionate, then that will help them get through it, through it another day and agree with you to keep fighting. And that's what I strive for every day. And everyone who works here with me has to have that mentality. And if they don't stick around.
Yeah. Well, I know that, you have an excellent team. I mean, you're just a great, compassionate person, and you're out to help people. And I think that's why exactly you put out those videos, because every single video answers a different question.
Yep.
And, people can watch those at 2:00 in the morning. They can watch them, anytime. They can go to your website. They can learn more about, how to apply,
Yep.
why they need you, why they can trust you.
Yep.
And they learn a little bit about the system in general and how, it requires patience.
It does. Yep.
So how can people find you? I mean,
well, there's lots of ways to find me. Like you mentioned, I have a lot of videos online. And some of those videos are testimonials from my clients. Some of those videos are simply answers to frequently asked questions. I have a website. I'm on Facebook. My website is hartwiglawfirm.com, and that's HARTWIG, hartwiglawfirm.com. We have a Facebook page. You can always call my office. We invite folks to call. It is a big part of our typical day is talking to our clients and potential clients on the phone. It's what we love to do. And my phone number is 508-732-8989.
That's fabulous. And I hope that anybody that's out there that's listening, if you have, if you or a loved one has experienced injury, you can't work, and you think that you qualify for SSDI or even SSI, pick up the phone, call Patrick. He's going to be a hero that you can, turn to. He's going to help you. He's going to answer all your questions. And this is why I brought Patrick on the podcast, because, you think of typical EHeroes as entrepreneurs who are out there, solving people's problems. That's what Patrick does. He might not always be this entrepreneur who's going to throw marketing advice at you or business advice at you or teach you systems. This guy is going to be there if you hurt yourself. And we need more people like Patrick.
Yep.
So I want to thank everyone for listening. Join me next time on a future podcast. If you haven't listened to some of the other ones, please stream through, and you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, the EHeroes website. But you can also find us on YouTube, just like Patrick's videos. And I'm going to put all the links below so you can contact Patrick directly. So Patrick, thank you for being on the show, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it.